Official Jets podcast is presented by WynnBET. Betting is a team sport. Bet together at WynnBET. Eric Allen here at One Jets Drive the day after Christmas, joined by the Mad Backer, as always, Bart Scott, in parts unknown. Bart, how was your Christmas?
It was good. You know, Christmas isn't really for the dads. It's like a tiring day, but, you know, it's built for the kids. Our parents did it for us, so it was good for us to do it for them. You know what I mean? I can see you still didn't have enough Christmas eggnog. You know, how was it for you and the kids and stuff like that? See, I think mine are a little older than yours, so I don't have to wake up at 6 a.m.
Oh, yeah, man. I'm just running on empty right now, but that's fine. You just keep on running just as long as you're moving.
Yeah, like Dory, right? Just keep swimming.
That's right. Okay, so let's go back to Christmas Eve. The New York Post ran an article. Brian Costello, Woody Johnson quoted as saying, "My decision is to keep both Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, of course. I think we've made some very positive moves. The culture of the team is a lot better. The defense is better. The offense just needs a few pieces." Your reaction?
I mean, we all knew that was the case. That was the reality. There's no way that you go out and Aaron Rodgers comes to you based on the people that you brought in, based on Saleh, based on Joe Douglas. We knew that now, if Aaron Rodgers would played all year and it would look like crap, then you blow it up. But you don't even know what it looks like. And hopefully you can be able to convince guys to come over and we'll see what the Aaron Rodgers effect is. Like I said before, we never got a chance to really see what the Aaron Rodgers effect was because he signed and the deal was done so late. So let's see if he has like that type of magnetic appeal to be able to attract, you know, people around the league that just wants to win championships. And when I say that, I mean hired guns. I mean come here and stacking the deck. But it's going to start with the draft, and they have to do a really good job in bringing in some linemen and being able to fix that situation because that doesn't, bode well. If you talk about any of the teams that's playing well and we give a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl, it's teams with good offensive lines. The Jets have an enormous amount of work to do in that regard.
All right, let's address Joe Douglas first. For my money, the Jets had a top 5 roster heading into this season with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I think Woody's right. There are a lot of pieces in place, correct?
Yeah, but I don't know if it was top 5, and it's because of the offensive line. When you think of it, you think about the Baltimore Ravens, you think about San Francisco 49ers, think about the Eagles, you think about the Los Angeles Chargers as well. You look at, the roster. I would put them probably top 10, maybe 12 or something like that, because Dallas has a tremendous roster. Buffalo Bills has a tremendous roster. But they have to go out and get some pieces. Now, what they do is when you think about the youth, if you put in the youth into that equation, you say, okay, well, some guys that are going to continue to develop. Quincy Williams, stepping up. Michael Carter's playing at a high level. You think about Breece Hall. You talk about Bryce Huff. These are all guys that you drafted that weren't expected to play at the level in which they're playing at. So when you look at it in that regard, I would say that they were probably top 12 in the league. But in the pivotal places, they really have to find a way to keep guys like Vera Tucker healthy. They have to try and hit on another. They got to find another Joe Tippmann. They got to go out in free agency and try and see if they can improve this roster from a offensive line standpoint. To me, that's the glaring weakness, that and wide receiver. So when you think about what they're talking about, how to improve this team, offensive line, you need 3 studs that you can put in there and kind of fill those voids. And you have to definitely get a number 2 receiver because right now they don't have a number 2 receiver on this roster.
I know you're really high on Joe Tippmann, and hopefully Elijah Vera Tucker comes back 100% because he is a great ball player, and it makes such a difference when he's on the field. Let's talk about the advancements you've seen under Robert Saleh. The first year, that was a complete roster teardown. Obviously, last year you take a step, win 7 games. This year, you went into the offseason saying, we need a veteran quarterback. They go out and get a 4-time NFL MVP. He goes down after 4 plays. With that being said, defense, very good. One of the better units in the National Football League. You've talked about what they need offensively, but what do you make of the way Saleh has things working on the coaching side?
I mean, I think you're talking about the defense side of the ball. I mean, I think you look at the dominance, and that's not even with a competent offense that they can play with the lead, right? They haven't been able to have them games like the Dallas Cowboys have had where they have the lead and then they can go out and hunt. They've pretty much been in tough ball games where teams had the option to be able to run the ball or pass the ball. They haven't been able to really have those games where teams are one-dimensional, where these guys can pin their ears back and just hit you with waves and waves of pass rush. Hopefully next year that'll change. One thing that I think the entire league has been put on notice is the fact that you have to have a competent backup. You see that with Jacoby Brissett coming back and almost bringing the Washington Commanders back. And before, on the pregame show that I do, I said that Jacoby Brissett would be my pick before the game even started. And he showed you the professionalism in which he can come in. And at age 31, who knows, maybe he gets a second chance to be able to get an opportunity to start, once Aaron Rodgers' era has left and become one of these guys like Geno Smith that gets a rebirth late in his career, because you know what you're going to get out of him. And when you have the other pieces around him like you do, you may be able to get away with not having a $200 million quarterback.
What's in the water that Breece Hall is drinking, buddy? You're talking about a guy coming off an ACL last week against Washington in that win, nearly 100 yards receiving, nearly 100 yards rushing. And despite playing against loaded boxes throughout the season, the guy's averaging close to 4.5 yards per carry.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? For the first time, they showed commitment to Breece Hall, right? Breece Hall should never leave a game where he has less than 20 rush attempts and maybe 10 pass attempts. Like, he should be the workload. The same way that Garrett Wilson gets that workload and he gets 13, 14 attempts, you should also, give that to him, much like, San Francisco used McCaffrey. You have to get this guy touches, and if you can get him in space, you see guys making business decisions, because when he gets in space, he's hard to bring down. Not that he's some super elusive guy. He has those gears that he can hit where he's, maybe in third, but then he can go to fourth gear and really accelerate past a lot of people. So you have to, get him the ball in space and find ways to get him the ball and get him touches to wear the defense down. And I thought they did that. And that's the benefits of what you see. Like, the fact that he's a premier back in his league and coming into the game, he only had 150 carries, right? He's a guy that should be way over that, right? We understand that the mark that we never want to get to with a running back is 400. We've seen the data on running backs, what happens to them the following year if they have 400 rushes. He should be somewhere around 250 right now. He's 100 carries short.
What's his potential with Rodgers? Rodgers coming back. And again, you said, hey, listen, in the offseason, you get some more targets around Garrett Wilson. But specifically, Breece, what's his potential with a guy like 8 back there?
I mean, he should be at 1,400 yards carrying the football. And then he should be sitting right there like 530 in pass attempts. And you look at it, that's 2,000 yards of productivity. 500, 5+ in the air, and 1,400, on the ground. I mean, that's just a regular, averaging slightly, under 100 yards rushing a game. And, you look at it like he should be getting at least 20 to 30 yards, receiving the ball, with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, because you're going to get favorable matchups, because you're going to be able to slip him out and make him the hot route, because you're going to be able to get him, on wheel routes and pick routes and things like that. So, I mean, when you look at it, to me, Breece, there's been a lot of comparisons of who Breece Hall is. I think Breece Hall is, a prime, Matt Forte in Chicago. We all know what that looked like.
We often talk about receivers reaching 1,000 yards and say, hey, that's not a big accomplishment in today's league, 17-game seasons passing league. But can we give a ton of kudos out there to Garrett Wilson when teams know that the Jets are going to try to get him the football, and he's got a chance to get there this week against the Cleveland Browns? He's played with 4 different quarterbacks again this year.
Yeah, when you think about it, he gets the hardest 60 to 70 yards receiving out of anybody in football, and it's almost not fair to him. And that's why priority number 1 or priority number 2 has to be getting him a Robin. It has to be getting him somebody on the opposite side. We watched a great game last night between two of the best teams in football, between the Baltimore Ravens and the San Francisco 49ers. And when you look out there, you see Zay Flowers, who has a lot of the tools that Garrett Wilson has, maybe a little, because of his height, is a little bit more quick as far as getting the ball in his hands. But, Garrett Wilson is electric with the ball in his hands and short passes as well. But he has, Rashad Bateman, who's a first-round draft pick. He has Odell Beckham, who's a first-round draft pick. He has Nelson Aguilar, who's a first-round draft pick. And then, when healthy, they have Mark Andrews on the other side. Then you go to the other side and you look at Deebo Samuels and you're like, okay, well, he has Brandon Ayuk. He has a guy like Kittles, right? He also has, McCaffrey, who
Yeah.
acts as a receiver as well. So, like, it's no secret, right? We're putting too much on Garrett Wilson to ask him to be Superman every play. And somebody has to, step forward. And if it's not on the roster right now, they say a guy can take the next step and graduate, then they have to go out and they have to get somebody that takes some of the pressure off of him, because he's throwing and catching the ball into crowded space and taking a pounding. And, his body's not going to hold up, for 5 years at this pace.
With that being said, how much do you appreciate his toughness and the physicality he plays with and that mindset? He's a dog every time he's out there. He never gives up on a play. You rarely see him stepping out of bounds. He's always trying to get that extra inch. And then after the play, I know you got to appreciate this, he's in guys' faces.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you see the competitive nature that he has, and we know what his pedigree is, coming from a program in college in Ohio State that, was always a contender to win a championship. And he has that championship mentality, and he's trying to get that feeling back. And like I said, we have to do a better job in helping him. So, I mean, in my opinion, outside of making some cunning moves, maybe bringing Jordan Whitehead back, or signing Chuck Clark to a 1-year deal, they have to go in the offseason where all the attention is paid strictly to the offense.
Jets fans, we're in our final push and the clock is ticking. WynnBET is giving you a golden opportunity to win VIP prizes for the 2023 season. The WynnBET Green Room is the most exclusive space at the stadium, with all-inclusive food and beverage, lower-level seats, and appearances by Jets legends and celebrities. New Jersey customers, all you need to do is wager at least $100 on WynnBET Sportsbook or Casino. For New York customers, all you need to do is wager at least $100 on WynnBET's Sportsbook. The best part? You get an entry for every $100 you wager.
Do you like hearing those reports out of practice that Aaron Rodgers tearing it up playing scout team? And also, can you just speak to that roster move last week, activating him? Because I think much was made of little, meaning that, hey, listen, the Jets just wanted him on the practice field. That's why he's on the active roster, and it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes a tremendous amount of sense, right? Because he wasn't able, because of the Jets being out of, postseason play contention, to be able to go out there and play and see it through. But you can continue to build and work, on the football field. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that if you didn't put him up, he wouldn't be able to practice. Right. So a lot of people, that's the casual fans that don't really understand the business side of football. You can't fault them for that, but everybody within a football space understood what it was all about and why it was important.
You mentioned Quincy Williams before. What's been the keys in terms of him becoming one of the most complete linebackers in the National Football League? And also, is this guy definitely a Pro Bowler?
It's going to be tough, man, because a lot of times you think about the Pro Bowl, it comes down to record, right? And people, see people in meaningful games. Who knows if Patrick Queen, because, Patrick Queen and, and Raekwon Smith gets in. So it makes it tough from that standpoint. I don't know what other linebackers are really going, but, a lot of times he'll get in maybe as an alternate, and then he'll be able to get in and play in the game and be able to be there with his brother. He's earned the right and earned the fact, but traditionally in football, the year that you do it, you don't get in. You get in the following year, right? That's why guys like C.J. Mosley, who has the brand recognition as well, may be the player that keeps him out of the Pro Bowl because of the brand recognition and the ranking of the defense. But he's definitely deserving of that award. I mean, he's played his ass off. You have to really applaud what he's done. But usually how this works is, people look at the record, then they look at who's playing. This is the year to get in, because it gets only harder next year when you think about guys like Milano coming back, who plays at a high level, and CJ continue to play at a high level. Raekwon Smith, who's been a perennial Pro Bowler, but he just got to keep going about his business. And people got to understand that we all eat when the team has success. You may have less, he may have worse statistics next year, but because the team is doing well, get voted in. But he should really take a bow, and the Jets should be applauded for finding his diamond in the rough, which was basically another man's trash that they made a treasure.
Where has he gotten most improved?
And his play recognition, his recognition and understanding personnel, understanding splits, understanding because it was never about what he can do in a run game. We knew he was like a hit stick, on that side of the ball, but really impressed with his man-to-man coverage, with his speed and his agility. But also for me, the hardest thing to do is to work well with others and being able how to pass routes and understand combinations and when you're being high-low, when to carry and then drop and then find the other guy coming to your zone, because guys do things, teams try and give you what we call take the cheese. They'll put that cheese in front of you, get you step up, and you put a lot of stress on the safeties behind. He's done a great job in being able to play from high to low and pass the combinations. I've talked about it a couple of times, and I can think of numerous plays that I've broken down where, it's high-level communication. And that's something when Saleh first came in that the team struggled with, especially on the back end, with dropping certain players and, not having the communication and all seeing the big picture. He sees the big picture, and he should be applauded for that.
Speaking about seeing the big picture, how about Sauce Gardner? Another game without anybody getting anything done against him. What is can you talk about him just being a technician? Everybody talks about his athleticism, Bart, which obviously he's rare in that regard.
And he's cool as that, but he's a linky guy. You wouldn't say that he was like the most athletic as far as shifty. He's just so smart, crafty, and I think no play, was a greater example of that than him, coming with Scary Terry on the scramble drill. Right, that's the patience, that's anticipation, that's fluidity, and that's finish and acceleration. To be able to stay on the back hip to make sure you don't make him go across, gear down when he gears down, anticipate that he's going to pivot out, understand that the quarterback's going to look for him in the scramble drill, be able to have the scramble drill, still stay in the back hip, and then be able to accelerate and use that tremendous length. So that was everything that Sauce brings to the table that's unique. Usually you see a guy with one or two of those. It's rare. It's very rare that you see guys with all three, right? You can say him and Patrick Surtain, you can just pencil them in for starting Pro Bowlers or all pros like pretty much every single season. And I mean, last year it was a debate who was better, Sauce or Tariq Woolen. And I think this year, Sauce showed you that there's levels to this. Just because they're both tall, lanky, and fast doesn't mean that they're the same. One is an imposter. Not saying that Woolen is not a tremendous talent, but it's levels to this. And Sauce is, definitely you always can make the argument top five. And as some of these guys start to graduate out and start to decline, when you talk about that, when I say that, I talk about guys like Big Play Slay. Bradbury's taking a step back. Some of the guys that we have penciled in as like the staples are starting to slow down. He's yet to even hit his peak, and we don't know how high his high is. You think about Greg Newsome out there. I watched Marlon Humphreys yesterday, and he's played at a high level, but he's starting to decline. And it happens to us all, right? But he's still very good, but you can see that he's starting to come the other way as Sauce continue to ascend, and that's the type of guys and that you start saying, okay, it's his time now.
This is one of the best years I've ever seen from a cornerback who doesn't have an interception through 15 games, because you always think about stats sometimes. But this guy has been dominant from the get.
Revis didn't have a lot of interceptions because it's not that many opportunities. And when you're on people don't realize when you're on an island, you're playing man to man a lot of times. It's not going to be opportunities for interceptions because your first priority is to make sure that the ball is batted down. You can't jump routes because if you miss it, it's nobody behind you to make the tackle. So, like, most of the time when you think about guys like, Richard Sherman, you think about guys like Bland. Like, these are guys who are jumping routes in zone because they know if they miss, it's somebody behind them, right? So, it's easy to get more interceptions when you're reading zones and combinations because if you jump something, it's not the ultimate penalty, right? But when you're one-on-one no help on an island, you can't go for those because you have to always make sure that you secure the tackle with one hand and knock the ball with the other one, unless it's some blatant like out route. But if it's some type of vertical route, you can't take those type of chances.
We got about 2 minutes left. Quick scouting report on the Cleveland Browns. Are you surprised they're sitting there at 10-5, and the Jets are going to see old friend Joe Flacco on the other side this week?
And Joe Flacco is the perfect person for Stefanski's offense, right? You talk about not boots, like where the guy's faking it and going out. You're talking about throwbacks where they're half boots and he's sitting in the pocket and he can just flick that ball with 2 fingers and take deep shots down the field. You talk about Amari Cooper, who's always been one of the best route runners, always competitive, a stocky built, kind of like Steve Smith type of receiver that, he can throw you off of him. He's bigger than you think. And then on the other side, the old faithful Elijah Moore. But the problem is Njoku, because he's a guy that's really playing at a high level and has come to life with Joe Flacco because of Joe Flacco's ability to throw the ball 50, 60 yards on the field, without even batting an eye. You have to worry about those big chunk plays that they get. And Joe Flacco almost throwing for 400 yards and sitting down and then coming back, having to come back. It's just the tip of the iceberg. He can still do that at a high level. They're going to have to get Joe off his spot and have to get there. But to do that, they have to go through one of the most diabolical line coaches in all of football who has creative ways of moving the pocket just slightly for Joe, but then also making sure that they have that turn protection that's tough to get through. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a hell of a challenge on a short week. In the dog pound, they're won 10 games and, talk about being on your 4th quarterback. And that's why you talk about how valuable the backup quarterback is. And oddly enough, Joe Flacco did make the call.
He just came full circle. Just flip it. 30 seconds. Jets offensively against this defense. The Browns bring it.
It's going to be tough sledding.
Yeah.
Mekhi Becton has been struggling. They're going to have to find a way to find Myles Garrett. But then it's not a play off if you're able to contain Myles Garrett. Ladarius Smith on the other side is a guy that's played very well in this league and plays at a high level as well. And then Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle. But also, you think about Garrett Wilson, he's going to have his hands full with Newsome. Newsome is their version of Sauce, and he plays at a very high level. He's announced himself as an elite corner for the last couple of seasons. One of the best defense, if not the best defense in all of football.
Merry Christmas, brother. We'll see you next week. I think it might be the new year.
Hey, man, you go get you some more eggnog. You can drink eggnog. It don't have to be Christmas, man. Take you a power nap.